By the year 1550, the Ottoman Empire physically occupied the center of the global economy. From the Balkans down to Egypt, they held the critical overland and maritime routes connecting the markets of Europe to the manufacturing centers of India and China. Through this corridor moved a staggering volume of global capital. Tons of newly mined silver from the Americas and gold from Europe flowed continuously eastward across Ottoman borders to purchase spices, silk, and finished goods from Asia. Despite being the conduit for this wealth, the Ottoman state ran chronic trade deficits. Bullion entered but bled east, draining imperial reserves. This drain created intense liquidity crises. Without physical currency, merchants couldn't trade, and the state struggled to provision its army. Controlling the geography of global trade guaranteed the Ottomans massive commercial traffic. It did not guarantee them capital. When confronted with severe shortages, pre-industrial absolutist regimes typically react the same way. The historical assumption is that a centralizing empire will immediately impose a rigid command economy, dictating price controls and enforcing strict monopolies on its currency. But an early modern state faces hard limits. Tracing the movement of grain or taxing silk at a port is a matter of manpower. Tracking the flow of precious metals and controlling the behavior of thousands of independent financiers is nearly impossible. Ottoman administrators recognized this limitation. As Şevket Pamuk's research shows, the bureaucracy learned that merchants could easily bypass state-mandated rules. Intervening in the money supply was vastly harder than intervening in goods. Instead of fighting a losing battle, the state adopted a policy of selective interventionism. They intervened in financial markets only during extreme crises, like wars or famines, to provision the capital and army. Otherwise, they stepped back. A pragmatic, porous monetary framework allowed the Ottoman economy to endure for 6 centuries, successfully outlasting the rigid models of its neighbors. To maintain political control over a vast empire, the Ottoman state first had to surrender total control over its money. This pragmatism was built into the very architecture of their currency. The empire stretched from the plains of Hungary down to Egypt, encompassing dozens of distinct economic traditions and local trade networks. At the macro level, the Ottomans applied a unified standard. They minted a single gold coin, the sultani. To ensure international merchants accepted it immediately, the state precisely matched the weight and purity of the Venetian ducat, the undisputed reserve currency of the Mediterranean. This unified the empire for high-level trade and imperial taxation. But everyday commerce required silver. If Istanbul had forced a single, unified silver currency across these diverse regional economies, they would have severely disrupted local pricing and caused commercial collapse. To prevent this, the empire established what Pamuk identifies as monetary zones, or parabelgari. The central state allowed its provinces to continue minting the silver coins they had used for generations, matching local weight and design traditions. The only requirement was that the coin bear the name of the Ottoman Sultan. A merchant in Anatolia or the Balkans conducted daily business using the traditional silver akçe. Meanwhile, markets in Egypt operated on the Medine, and Hungary utilized entirely separate silver structures, aligned with Central European trade. This monetary decentralization was a deliberate, sophisticated macroeconomic strategy. By conforming to local market habits, the state ensured maximum liquidity in the provinces. Maintaining separate tiers of gold and silver exposed early modern economies to a lethal mechanical threat: bimetallism. The market ratio of gold to silver fluctuated constantly based on global supply. The Republic of Venice represents the extreme response. Venice utilized rigid interventionism, constantly passing laws to artificially fix the exchange rate between gold and silver coins within its borders. This visualization tracks the trigger condition for Gresham's law. When a state legally fixes an exchange rate that ignores the actual global market, it inevitably undervalues one of its own coins. Bad money drives out good. In Venice, whenever the state undervalued its high-purity coins, merchants immediately hoarded them, melted them down, or exported them. The currency simply vanished from the economy, sparking sudden, severe liquidity crises. The Ottomans refused to fall into this trap. Rather than issuing decrees from a central bank, they let the bazaar dictate the math. The Ottoman policy allowed the exchange rates of all coins to float freely. According to archival records, the daily value of silver and gold was determined at the local level by Qadi courts, based entirely on ground-level market conditions. When official tax collectors gathered revenue, they were issued continuously updated lists detailing exactly which coins to accept and at what floating rate. The state adjusted its ledgers to match the street. By refusing to legally fix the exchange rate, the Ottomans defeated Gresham's law. It made hoarding mathematically useless, ensuring the maximum possible amount of bullion remained circulating in their markets. We see the opposite approach in the contemporary Mughal Empire in India. The Mughals operated a closed vault economy. Because India exported massive quantities of textiles and spices, the Mughals ran immense global trade surpluses. Silver piled up at their borders. This wealth gave them the luxury of strict domestic standardization. They actively melted down every foreign coin that entered their territory, reminting it entirely into their own currency. The Ottomans, running chronic trade deficits, could not afford the luxury of monetary ego. Instead of a vault, Istanbul acted as a porous sieve. To combat their constant liquidity crises, the Ottoman state actively encouraged the influx of foreign currency. The state officially integrated European coins into the domestic economy, granting them the status of legal tender. Spanish silver pieces of 8 circulated widely in local markets alongside Ottoman silver. For high-level transactions, the gold Venetian ducat operated freely inside Ottoman borders, trusted as a secure vehicle for savings by local elites. The Ottoman state survived its deficits by importing the money of its geopolitical rivals to keep its own commercial heart beating. This pragmatic equilibrium held until the late 16th and 17th centuries. The influx of cheap American silver caused global inflation, and a series of massive, prolonged wars pushed the Ottoman fiscal system to the breaking point. To cover spiraling military costs, the state resorted to takshish, or severe currency debasement. They stripped the silver content out of the akçe. As this data highlights, the debasement reached its most extreme levels between 1769 and 1843, driving intense inflation and forcing the closure of domestic mints. During this period, the domestic economy ran almost entirely on foreign coinage and severely degraded local currency. The system required a total reset, arriving with the Tashi-i-Aya reforms of 1844. The empire finally abandoned its regional monetary zones and floating rates. To integrate into 19th-century global capital markets, Istanbul adopted a strict, modern bimetallic standard, pegging 1 gold lira to 100 silver kurush. The pressures of the modern industrial era eventually forced standardization, but the decentralized pragmatic system had kept the empire solvent for over 300 years prior. Stepping back from the granular data, the behavior of these early modern empires provides a remarkably clear matrix of macroeconomic strategy. The Republic of Venice failed through rigid command, continuously attempting to outlaw the mathematical reality of global markets. The Mughal Empire succeeded through surplus standardization, a closed-loop system enabled by immense domestic wealth. The Ottoman Empire survived through pragmatic integration. They recognized their geographic constraints and actively absorbed global economic pressures, rather than attempting to fight them. Ottoman monetary policy was never driven by rigid imperial ego. It was dictated by stark macroeconomic realism. The Ottoman economy endured by conforming to the rules of global money, rather than attempting to enforce a single imperial standard across 3 continents.